know, kids are by far the largest group of asymptomatic variants. You hear these tragedies of the kids coming home and infecting one or both of their parents or grandparents and then dying.
Experts say it will be challenging to achieve herd immunity without vaccinating children. Right now, studies are moving quickly to ensure those vaccines are safe for our kids. Pfizer and Moderna are both in the process now of testing their vaccines on children and teenagers.
Yeah, Pfizer is currently approved for ages 16 and older, so right now their trials are for kids ages 12 to 15. Moderna's trials are for 12 to 17. The companies both expect to have data by June and a vaccine approved for kids a couple months later.
So my thought is that we'll have a licensed vaccine for 12 and above before the 21-22 school year, so by August of this year. For the younger kids, I think it'll be a little bit longer.
All right, let's bring in Dr. Juan Salazar, physician-in-chief at Connecticut Children's, to talk about these trials. Doctor, welcome.
It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks for being here. So what are you hearing about how these vaccines are performing in kids?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So the vaccines, as you heard just a little while ago, are being tested in kids aged 12 to 18. That is the next group. Pfizer is finished enrolling about 2,500 kids into their study using the same protocols that were used for the adult formulations. Moderna is also getting close to finishing their trial, and Johnson & Johnson and the other vaccines that are coming down the pike will be testing vaccines in kids starting at the age of 12. And then subsequently, they'll move on to kids starting at the age of 5. And hopefully by next year, around this time, they'll be doing trials even in babies. So the answer is we have to move forward. We can't leave kids out of the vaccination process. It is essential for us to get to a sense of normality so that parents can feel safe sending their kids to school in many ways. What we're hearing is good news. Obviously, the results have not been published yet, and we're eagerly awaiting for those results.
Have you heard anything about side effects or reactions in children in these studies?
Yeah, when I speak to my colleagues that are involved in these studies, and Dr. Frank was at Cincinnati Children's, is a great friend and infectious disease expert, and the reality is that the side effects are minimal and very similar to what has been seen in adults. Primarily, some pain and ache in the arm. There might be some achiness, some low-grade fever in some patients, but no different than in the adult populations. And for the most part, the kids that have been included in the trials have done very well so far.
All right, let me get your thoughts, Dr. Salazar. Do you think our kids will be vaccinated by the time school starts in the fall? And if not, will it be safe to go back for in-person learning?
Those are two questions. The first one is that I do believe that these vaccines will be available for kids over the age of 12 by the summer. I think we have good evidence that Pfizer, Moderna, and perhaps even Johnson & Johnson will make them available. And what I urge the public is as soon as those become available, go ahead and get the kids vaccinated. I'm sure the commissioner and the governor will lay out a plan that's going to be very specific so we can actually get those kids vaccinated. Younger populations, 5 to 12, probably not yet in that age group. So we won't have the vaccine for them quite yet, perhaps early next year. That's the first part. The second part of the question is, can they go back to school? So my answer is kids need to go back to school. This has been a very, very difficult situation for our kids. Staying at home, I think they need to get back to their educational environments. We can do it safely. I think the health department and the state have done a tremendous job advising municipalities on how to do this correctly. And for the most part, people are going to be safe, even if they're not vaccinated. And hopefully, with a little bit of luck, by sometime this year, everyone will have access to the vaccine and will feel even safer and get back to a sense of normality for all of us.
All right, Dr. Juan Salazar, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Doctor, thank you. All right, another question we hear a lot about here is, should you get vaccine while you're pregnant? That has been a burning question on the minds of expectant moms all over the country. News 8's Amber Diaz has more on a new COVID trial for pregnant women and how they're reacting to getting the shot.
Pfizer is enrolling some 4,000 pregnant women to participate in its COVID vaccine trial. This after extensive analysis on animals showing the shot's safety and efficacy. Expectant moms were initially left out of COVID trials as a safety precaution by the FDA.
When the vaccine first came out, I was like, There's no data. I don't know what to do.
Laura Phipps is 8 months pregnant and works at Gaylord Specialty HealthCare. It's been over 2 weeks since she received her second shot of the Moderna vaccine.
I was nervous because everyone was talking about how bad their second shot reactions were, like missing work and all that. I'm like, oh, here we go. Let's do this.
With the exception of some chills and a sore arm, she was fine. But the limited data out there is still making moms hesitant about that shot in the arm.
What we know about the vaccine, it's just not enough for me to take the risk.
Jocelyn Oliver is a contact tracer and is pregnant with her second child. She's not against the vaccine, but tells me she won't be getting it while she's pregnant. She says she suffered enough around the holidays.
So you were pregnant while you had COVID?
I had just started my third trimester. Terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I was hospitalized, all of the above. It was a really interesting experience.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said the technology used to create the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines is, quote, unlikely to pose a specific risk for people who are pregnant. Pfizer and BioNTech also say their research found, quote, no evidence of fertility or reproductive toxicity in animals who were tested with the vaccine.
Studying new vaccines, new drugs in pregnancy is always a tricky area.
Dr. Audrey Merriam, assistant professor in the Department of Obstetrics, Gynecology, and Reproductive Science at Yale, says not all women should be getting the vaccine.
It really is a case-by-case basis, and we encourage women to talk to their physician. Out of all the pregnant and lactating women that have been vaccinated, they've been, reporting their symptoms. There's lots of kind of studies going forward, asking women about their symptoms and anything after the vaccine, and everything has been very promising.
Now, if you've learned anything from these women, it's to talk to your doctor. Disclose your underlying health conditions and fears when it comes to your life and the life of your child. Meanwhile, Pfizer hopes to wrap up their trial by January of 2023. Amber Diaz, News 8.
All right, Dr. Giuttani, let's ask you about this. Is it safe for pregnant women to get the vaccine now, or should more trials be done first?
As we have just heard, the trials are really underway to be able to give definitive information about this. Having said that, for many people, this is a tough decision, and it's something you really need to weigh for yourself personally and in speaking with your physician. Because we do know that pregnant women who do get COVID-19 do have higher chances of having adverse effects, whether it be being hospitalized, potentially even in the ICU. So what I usually advise people to do is to look at their individual circumstance. If they are in a setting where they are potentially interacting with a lot of people and could be at greater risk of acquiring COVID-19, that may be a situation in which you strongly consider getting vaccinated. If you are pregnant and able to stay largely at home and not have much interaction with others, it may be safer and you feel more comfortable not taking the vaccine. That is certainly justifiable because your risk may be relatively low. So at the end of the day, people have to make this decision looking at their own personal circumstance.
Okay. Dr. Abrantes, let's ask you about this. Is there a certain period of time, do you think, that an expecting mom should wait before they get vaccinated to ensure the safety of their growing fetus? What do you think?
So like we've heard, again, it's mainly that there's been lack of data, but not the presence of harmful data in pregnant women. That being said, it needs to be individualized, also with timing, although there's been no recommended timing of what's best for women. Like Dr. Giuttani had mentioned too, it really is individualized on the risk of someone actually developing COVID-19 and being pregnant as well. Obviously, we saw that with healthcare workers, and we've had lots of women who've gotten this vaccine. Over 30,000 now since mid-February have been reported to be safe of getting the vaccine. And I was one of them. And these are very difficult decisions to have to make, but again, very individualized to speaking to your providers, your OBGYN, to making sure it's the right option for you. And again, it's just the lack of data that we have to say that it's absolutely safe in pregnancy, but really there's been no safety signals in all of the women that have been pregnant suggesting that there were any adverse effects specifically because of the vaccine.
All right, Keith Grants, let's ask you this one. Women who are breastfeeding, can they get the COVID vaccine? And if they do, does it improve the immunity of the baby? How does that work? Do we know that?
So that's a good question. Again, what we're missing is data. And I think what the biggest thing with all this data, and Dr. Abrantes says, well, is time. So we haven't had enough time in order to study this enough. What we do have is, if you look at actual data of the science behind the vaccine and appreciate the fact that how the vaccines are broken down, each vaccine is broken down in individual bodies, highly unlikely for the vaccine to be passed in its form through breast milk or through breastfeeding. What we do know, I think the second part of your question is a very good question. So we do know that mothers pass on protective antibodies to babies in many forms, different kind of antibodies. And, we can assume that there's a possibility that COVID-19 antibodies that's developed through vaccinating the mothers, that you might be able to pass that antibody onto the baby as well, possibly.
Possibly. All right, doctor, thank you. One of the wild cards in this whole thing are these new, more contagious variants of COVID-19.
Yeah, coming up, a look at several different kinds of COVID that have made their way into Connecticut and how effective the vaccines are against them. We'll be right back.